one of the things that you say, I think, in every episode is you say that, traditional Stoicism brings back sort of the spiritual aspect of Stoicism. And I love that. And that's sort of a key word that you hear pretty often today. People talk about spiritual practices a lot of times in the form of like meditation and yoga, or even, that sort of thing. But I personally think that it's really hard to live a happy life as a human being without any sort of spiritual aspect whatsoever. So I love the fact that you use that term and sort of bring it back. And like, what does that really mean to you in terms of Stoicism, particularly traditional Stoicism, like that idea of spirituality? What specifically is that?
Well, it's tied into the concept of a providential cosmos. So if the cosmos is truly providentially ordered, then there's some kind of an intelligence. We would say, I'll just say behind it, but it's not really behind it. It's within it. It's immanent within it. But it means that there's a purpose to all of this. The cosmos has some purpose. Now, that purpose may not be specifically to benefit Chris Fisher. In fact, I would argue it's not specifically to benefit Chris Fisher or Brandon. It is to benefit itself as a whole. We benefit from that. But the idea that I'm a part of an organism, which is what the Stoics conceived the cosmos to be. I'm a part of this organism that has a telos, that has a purpose, that has a design, and that I'm playing a role in that. And that part of my role is to align my being, all of my desires, all of my assents, all of my actions with that goal is a spiritual practice in and of itself. So you're saying, I am no longer the summum bonum of existence, which is kind of where you go with a lot of nihilism and some of the other concepts that abandon any spirituality at all. What are you left with? Well, the only thing that's good is what I define as good, right? And then we can have a fight over what we define as good. But when we can point to some kind of good outside of ourselves, which is the purpose of the cosmos, and then tie ourselves into that and live a life according to it, which is, again, what the Stoics argue is that the good life is the life lived in agreement or in accord with nature, nature being not trees and rocks and rivers and lakes, but nature meaning the entire cosmos, all of existence. When we're in harmony with that, then and only then can we actually live a virtuous life and experience well-being, or eudaimonia is the word that the Greeks used.
Mm-hmm. It's such a way to sort of ease a lot of the anxiety and discomfort we have in day-to-day life when you adopt that mentality, right? Like particularly because most people have a job of some sort, right? And they work with people. Some of those people they're going to like, some of those people they're not going to like. And Marcus Aurelius is one of his most famous things. It probably gets talked about way too much, but he's talking about how in his life he's going to meet these people. He's going to meet good people. He's going to meet some people that are going to annoy him, and so he's preparing himself to sort of be kind. But that really gets down to that idea of providence, like how you fit in with everything around you, and that it's not. It's like you mentioned, it's not about you per se. And you put it really beautifully. I think the last time we spoke, you said sometimes things might not be good for you, but that doesn't mean that they're not good for the cosmos. And that
right.
And that's really well put, but it's interesting because, okay, so let's take that example. This will be interesting to talk about. So let's say you're in a situation where that is the case. So something bad is happening to you right now, individually, and so you adopt this idea of the providence, and you say, well, this is good for the whole. But how do you implement that in that particular moment when you're sort of feeling that? Is it I don't know. Do you personally find that easy, or do you think there's like what's the cognitive practice to I guess achieve that?
Well, I would say easy, no, and do I fail at it frequently? Yes. But the idea is that when I'm experiencing an event that I am at that moment perceiving to be bad, the first thing I have to do is say, okay, realize this is not really truly bad because it's not affecting my character. But let's take it outside of bad and go to preferred indifferent as opposed to a dispreferred indifferent. Well, it is in the handling of the indifference that we develop our virtue. We don't develop our virtue by dealing exclusively with things that are good and bad, but really how we handle the indifference. So let's say I'm on my way to work and there's an aggressive driver that cuts me off and forces me to slam on my brakes. Well, at that point, I could say, well, this is something bad for me, and I could let anger start to rise up in me, and I might honk my horn, and in my case, since I'm a law enforcement officer, I might turn on my lights and siren if but that's not the point. The point is I can stop and I can say, okay, even though this moment, and we can use anyone, it could be, or anything, it could be the loss of a leg, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a child, this thing that I'm experiencing as a dispreferred indifferent, the question I have to stop and ask and is, what could the cosmic purpose be here? What good can come out of this? And the only good that I'm in control of is the good that I can develop in my own character as a result of this particular event. So I can be angry about it. I can, moan and groan about it. None of that helps me to develop my character. But if I look at this thing and I say, okay, now I only have one leg. I don't have two legs any longer. And it's not going to do me any good to moan and groan about it. But what can I do to develop my character as a result of this apparent tragedy or the loss of a loved one? And I think all of us, I'll speak for myself. I know that long before I became a Stoic, I found myself, resonating with stories of people who overcame tragedy. I think there's just an innate part of our nature that it's like we love to see people who overcome, in spite of it all, they somehow prosper. And by prosper, I mean live a good life. And that doesn't mean they get wealthy. That doesn't mean that life is easy for them. But they internalize. You see veterans that come back and have had their legs blown off, and some of them are destroyed by that, and others take that as an opportunity to do something positive. Might be helping other veterans. It might be helping kids that were born without legs. But they take what has happened to them and they turn it into something good, rather than just sitting down in the corner and crying about it and complaining about it, that life has not been fair to me. One of the Marcus's famous statements is, that basically, I'm paraphrasing, but if you're upset about the way or what life has handed you, then stop and think about it. It's either Providence or Adams. You can be angry because it's just chance, or you can try to find some purpose in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that about Marcus Aurelius. He does that a lot with things. He did this with God as well. He sort of broke down both sides of the spectrum. Well, if there's a God, if there is a God, you should be good because God wants you to be good. But if there's not a God, you should still be good because now you can be good on earth, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.